All right, I'm going to bring back in my guest to talk more about this. Just so heartbreaking what Patricia Owens has been through. Hopefully she's getting some closure there, as we saw. Still with me, former prosecutors, current private criminal defense attorneys Sue Ann Robinson and Josh Ritter on the program today. Josh, let me go with you first on this one, if I may, please, tapping into your experience as a former prosecutor. We know the dynamic with Patricia Owens and Yaser Saeed was a terrible one. From what we've learned throughout this trial, she was largely victimized, albeit in different ways than her girls were victimized by him, but still, she was petrified of him, received threats from him, and there are some accounts that she might have been a victim of domestic abuse at his hands. All that being said, she's on the stand yesterday and obviously heartbroken about the loss of her daughters. It's tricky, is it not, when you have somebody who's experiencing domestic violence in their home, but they're also a parent, and have an obligation to protect their children. And if you could kindly speak to that here, please. We know these girls came forward with sex assault allegations when they were 8 and 9. Saying their dad was sexually abusing them, took it to mom, mom goes to police, dad finds out, then dad threatens mom, and then she takes the girls to retract the statements. Tell me what you see going on here and how tricky a dynamic that is when there's abuse going on in the whole household.
Right. It's important, I think, to paint the picture for the jurors of what domestic violence really is and how it's not as straightforward as we might think. And you're right. Perhaps some of those jurors are parents themselves, most likely, and perhaps they're putting themselves in the position of that mother and what would they have done. And a lot of people say to themselves, I wouldn't allow it to have happened. I would have done something different. I would have taken those girls away. But when you understand this kind of cycle of abuse that's not just physical or sexual, but it's also mental and emotional, and the kind of fear that you can be put in, oftentimes victims of domestic violence will retract their statements. Oftentimes they'll say, I don't want to prosecute. And that's why it's such a horrible epidemic that we're dealing with in this country. But you're right, it's a difficult or rather a delicate thing that you have to handle with the jurors. But I think it's important for them to have that kind of holistic understanding of what was it like to live in this man's house where everyone was suffering from abuse.
Right. Well said, Josh. I want to play a clip in which the judge gives both sides an instruction, and this is at the point where Yaser Saeed is on the stand. He's testifying, and we know the issue of the girls and the allegations of sexual abuse were something that was battled out in the motions in limine before trial. It was raised again at trial. The defense tried really hard to keep it out. Sue Ann, I'm going to go to you after we look at this video. Let's take a look at how Her Honor instructs the respective attorneys.